From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefania Bravo, and this is From the South. Israeli troops shot and wounded 10 Palestinians on the Gaza border on Friday. Palestinian officials say Israeli forces fired live ammunition and tear gas at large groups of protesters. Egyptian mediators and humanitarian officials are working to avoid further bloodshed ahead of Saturday's planned mass demonstrations to mark the first anniversary of the Great March of Return border protest. But at the same time, Israel has amassed soldiers and tanks on the border. And on Thursday, Israel's prime minister said he was prepared to wage a military campaign on Gaza if needed. Palestinians celebrate March 30th as Land Day. It was on that day in 1976 that Israeli police shot and killed 6 Palestinians for protesting against the Israeli government's occupation of Palestinian land. At least 195 Palestinians have died during these protests over the past year, according to the UN. And ahead of Saturday's demonstrations, the UN's top humanitarian official in the occupied Palestinian territories, through a spokesperson, has called for calm.
I would say a stark reminder to everyone involved in this that the protection of lives, not least of children, must be at the top of everyone's agenda during what we expect would be big demonstrations tomorrow.
The OCHA spokesperson also highlighted the number of Palestinians who have been injured during the year of protest.
Nearly 29,000 Palestinians have been injured, including over 7,000 people by live ammunition. 3 clearly marked health workers providing care to the wounded during demonstrations have been killed, and over 630 others injured. As a result of the demonstrations, 1 member of the Israeli security forces was killed and 6 others have been injured. The many Palestinian casualties, including trauma injuries and more than 120 limb amputations, has overwhelmed the Gaza health system, which was already challenged by chronic power outages, shortages of essential medicines and supplies, and gaps in critical services, including mental health and psychosocial support.
Washington is again warning Russia about sending troops and military equipment to Venezuela. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has apparently been giving a list of options to respond to Russia's growing presence in Venezuela, including new sanctions. And Donald Trump's National Security Advisor John Bolton says the U.S. will, quote, consider such provocative actions as a direct threat to international peace. Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza responded on Twitter saying, quote, John Bolton's job should be to ensure the security of the U.S., but it seems that someone pays him more for interfering unsuccessfully in Venezuelan internal affairs, which his ancient discourse combining elements of Cold War and the Monroe Doctrine. Arreaza goes on to say, quote, although it seems incredible, from Venezuela we must remind almost daily several Western governments that they must respect international law, as well as the principles and purposes of the Charter of the UN, including respect for the internal affairs of other countries. During an exclusive interview with Telesur, the mayor of Caracas said that peace in the country has been ensured after the second terrorist attack against the country's electrical system.
This attack had the goal of creating violence and breaking down harmony and peace in our country. As our president says, peace has to be achieved on the streets. And we have been active across the territory, deploying security and working closely with social organizations to safeguard peace.
Mayor Erika Farías has also explained why opposition figure Juan Guaidó was barred from holding public office.
Guaidó is clearly receiving funds from somewhere, and he's not declaring where they come from or how much he gets. that is a crime. That is why our controller sanctioned him, and he was barred from holding any public office for 15 years.
The Parliament of Catalonia, through its Commission for Foreign Affairs, passed a motion in favor of peace and dialogue in Venezuela on Thursday. The motion also condemns the recent attacks on Venezuelan sovereignty.
Above all, and principally, there is an attack on the national sovereignty of Venezuela and the sovereignty of the people of Venezuela in the face of a coup d'etat orchestrated by the United States with the immediate support of the fascist Jair Bolsonaro and the right wing in Latin America. It has the support of the majority of the big resource-extracting corporations on a global scale. It's important to say that militarily, it is being directed by the United States from Colombia. This is the profile of the coup d'etat and the recognition of Mr. Guaidó. Evidently, those behind the coup aren't interested in the human, social or political rights of the people of Venezuela, nor the sovereignty of the people of Venezuela. What interests them is the strategic resources, one of the biggest reserves of oil on the planet, and control over geopolitically important territory on the American continent.
Representative Carlos Riera also spoke from the perspective of the Popular Unity candidacy in left-wing pro-Catalan Independence Party.
From our point of view, not the resolution, but our position is that the best path to overcome this situation is to deepen and develop the Bolivarian revolution started by Commander Hugo Chavez, and through faith and loyalty to the founding principles of the revolution. That is our position, in defense of international and democratic principles of non-intervention and respect for the sovereignty of nations.
Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel has arrived in Nicaragua for the 8th summit of the Association of Caribbean States. Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez posted a photo as Díaz-Canel was greeted in Managua by Nicaraguan officials. The president said his visit confirms their support for the revitalization of the ACS and to defend it as a space for dialogue and cooperation for the peoples of the Caribbean. One of the main goals of this meeting is creating a solid strategy to combat climate change. Let's take a look.
The inauguration for the second day of the ACS summit was done by General Secretary of the ACS, June Somer, and the Nicaraguan Foreign Vice Minister, who said this organization is capable of increasing the number of economic and social projects in the region.
We have recommended adopting the triennial plan of the ACS, which would set a way forward for the organization on the next few years. We need to carry out the main duties of the organization, which include risk reduction, sustainable tourism, transportation, commerce, and this year we have also agreed to revitalize, strengthen and promote culture and education across the Caribbean.
Meanwhile, the Secretary General of the Bolivarian Alliance for the People of Our Americas says he considers unity to be of the utmost importance to address issues created by capitalism.
We are discussing climate change, which is a global issue directly linked to this economic model, which is highly irrational and affects every single person in the world.
And Barbados is set to take the temporary presidency of the ACS. The Barbadian Foreign Minister, Jerome Walcott, promised he would work hard to accomplish the organization's goals for the 2019-2021 period.
I want everyone to remember Article 3 of our association. Those words, deliberation, cooperation, and focused action. This will be our motto once Barbados takes the presidency of the ACS, to make sure that we are doing this for the people, for our people. We are here to work restlessly.
A meeting of the heads of states takes place on Friday. 25 member nations, 9 associate members, 6 international organizations, and 17 representatives from countries observing the meeting are present.
Playback version, stay with us. Welcome back. On May 10th, the Caribbean Court of Justice will be hearing the matter of the no-confidence motion against Guyana's government. This was decided during a case management meeting held at the CCJ on Friday. Opposition leader Bharat Jagdeo filed the matter at the court after Guyana's appeal court overturned the no-confidence motion that was passed in the parliament on December 21st. Jagdeo is looking to Guyana's highest court to reverse the ruling and revalidate the motion.
To be carried out.
Caribbean governments might find it hard to borrow from commercial banks if their debt to GDP ratio exceeds 140%. That's according to Republic Financial Holdings Limited Chairman Ronald Hartford. He said financial institutions were told that they weren't serious about retrieving all their money if they continued in this vein. Hartford made the comment during a panel discussion at the Domestic Financial Institutions Conference in Barbados on Thursday, saying financial institutions received a very strong and brutal lesson during talks in the debt restructuring program and would need to be wiser going forward. Gun offenders may soon face stronger penalties in the aftermath of a spate of shootings in Trinidad and Tobago. There are over 8,000 illegal firearms on the Twin Island, and that's a conservative figure.
I am intending to bring legislation or a policy to Cabinet asking them to agree to the increase in fines, penalties, sentences for repeat firearm offenders. So that is one way that I intend to deal with it. Again, that will be subject to Cabinet. But what I envisage and what I've asked be prepared as a note, a first offender, this is the level of fine and sentence that you're liable to. Second time we catch you with an illegal firearm and you're charged with an illegal firearm, I would like it to go up substantially. The third time, third striking you out, again, higher again.
Brazilian police have arrested suspects in the murder of social leader Dilma Silva. Authorities say landowner Fernando Ferreira Rosa Filho was the mastermind behind Silva's murder last Friday. She was a coordinator for the movement of people affected by dams. Her husband and a family friend were also assassinated. Police say the three victims were gagged, tied, and stabbed. The alleged perpetrators have been identified as four brothers: Marlos Alves, Cosme Francisco Alves, Alan Alves, and Glaucimar Francisco Alves. And also in Brazil, mining company Vale has raised alert levels near 3 dams due to a rupture risk. According to Brasil de Fato, the problems were identified by National Mining Agency. 2 of the dams are the city of Ouro Preto and 1 is in Nova Lima. In January, Vale's dam in Minas Gerais ruptured, killing hundreds. That was the second deadly rupture of a Vale dam in Minas Gerais in about 3 years. Former Brazilian President Michel Temer has formally been accused of corruption for a second time. A Brazilian court accepted a new complaint against Temer for allegedly accepting $130,000 in bribes through an intermediary. The former president was arrested last week, accused of being part of a criminal organization that accepted bribes in exchange of public construction projects. Temer spent 4 days in jail before being released by a judge who said his preventive detention wasn't needed before the trial began. Brazil's unemployment rate has increased for the second month in a row. According to official data, 12.4% of active Brazilians are jobless. That is almost 1% higher than the previous term. The last figures from the Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics said more than 13 million people do not have a job in the country. Moving on, the Constitutional Court of Ecuador has suspended a series of requirements that the government ordered last year in order to clamp down the entry of Venezuelans into the country. The court accepted a claim of unconstitutionality filed by the Ombudsman Office on the matter. As such, Ecuador's highest court ruled to temporarily shelve the government's decree, which required additional documentation from Venezuelan migrants. Some of these requirements include a visa, proof of relatives in the country, and a police record. The sexual abuse scandal of the Catholic Church in Chile took a turn this week as a court ordered the church to pay 3 of the victims $150,000 in damages.
Cardinal Errázuriz arrived silently to the district attorney's office of Santiago. He is one of the top authorities of the Chilean Catholic Church and is accused of covering up sexual abuse in the institution. He will have to face the district attorney, this time due to other cases related to his covering up of the crimes of former priest Fernando Cardima committed against Juan Carlos Cruz, James Hamilton and Jose Andres Morillo, among others, who will have to be compensated by the church.
His crimes involve the Archdiocese of Santiago as a whole, as well as Cardinal Errázuriz and Esati, both tried for covering up criminal activity and lying in a court of law.
This is an unprecedented ruling in Chile that will certainly leave a mark.
Today, the Chilean state has clarified that all institutions must protect the rights of citizens, and that nobody, even people in a position of great power, can abuse and cover sexual abuses in impunity.
Today is a historic day because they haven't just found them guilty, but also because an entire system which works to hide sexual predators has been brought to light and could cascade to other parts of the world.
The victims say there's still optimism. Maybe Chile will become one of the first countries to arrest a predator priest. The Chilean justice system seems to have understood that divine justice is not enough.
The decision not to appeal is being studied by lawyers. But to reach a solution to this case, the money used to pay victims must come directly from the church, not from the 1% of cash given by churchgoers for other issues.
This payment will have to come out of church reserves, according to church authorities, who have also said they plan to meet with the victims personally.
Chilean and Norwegian authorities have signed an agreement to return historic artifacts currently located in a museum in Oslo. The items and thousands of unpublished photographs come from expeditions of a Norwegian explorer to the eastern island in the 50s and the 80s. The Chilean Culture Ministry said this is a direct response to demands by the Rapa Nui indigenous people to recover their cultural patrimony. After the U.S. president criticized Mexico once again of taking no actions to stop migrants from arriving to the U.S., the Mexican president replied, saying Mexico's policies are meant to help migrants.
We, of course, respect President Trump's position, but we are going to help. We're not going to say that this is a U.S. problem or a problem of Central American countries, or that it doesn't apply to us, Mexicans. No, we're going to help. But everything will be done willingly, not by force, so that migrants see they have options available in our country.
A U.S. artist is criticizing the U.S. president's border wall by building a wall of his own, using only solid blocks of cheese. Cosimo Caballaro is using cheese as bricks to knock the government's increase in spending on border security. The artist says he wants to raise funds for his wall, selling shirts with the phrase "Make America Great Again," using a cheese grater image. The Pentagon has recently authorized $1 billion to build part of the wall proposed by Trump along the Mexican border.
To me, this cheese wall is a stand in that, you know, when I look at that wall, I don't see the waste. When I look at this wall, I see the waste. And that's the point, is to bring that awareness to you, that making a wall is a waste. Okay? Somebody says, well, you can feed people with this cheese. Yes, but you know how much you can feed the people with that structure? We have to stop the ignorance to making walls, because when you build a wall too high and you need to go out, you're going to be your own prisoner.
We'll take a short break now. Don't go away. Welcome back. Unprecedented floods have hit Iran, causing at least 44 deaths and forcing evacuations. According to officials, several villages near rivers and dams in different provinces have been evacuated. Thousands of people are displaced, while others are in emergency shelters provided by the government. The president has promised compensation for all financial losses and called for the armed forces to help in flooded areas. Last year, at least 30 people were killed in flash floods in the eastern part of neighboring Azerbaijan. A lawsuit has been filed against the Boeing company in a U.S. federal court by a family of a Rwandan man that died in the Ethiopian plane crash. The relatives of Jackson Musoni allege that the Boeing 737 MAX had a design flaw in its automated flight control system. They say this caused the crash in which 157 people died earlier this month. Boeing is yet to respond to the action. On Wednesday, Boeing announced a fix to the control system linked to 2 plane crashes, while investigators are yet to determine the cause of the accidents. Burundi's Communication Council has revoked the BBC's right to broadcast in the country and forbidden local journalists to provide information to the British company. Authorities said the BBC broadcasted a documentary last year, which was a lie, violating media laws. The documentary was about killings by security forces in a secret house in the capital, Bujumbura.
The Assembly has deliberated and approved at its March 29 session that the operating license of the British Broadcasting Corporation radio station is withdrawn. It is strictly forbidden for any journalist, Burundian or any other nationality, on the national territory to provide information, directly or indirectly, that can be broadcast by the BBC.
For a third time, the British House of Commons has voted down Theresa May's deal to withdraw from the European Union. Members of Parliament rejected the agreement by a majority of 58. That is less than in the 2 previous votes, but is still a huge defeat for the Prime Minister. The Brexit process has now entered another period of huge uncertainty.
286, the noes to the left.
Theresa May had offered to resign if her deal was approved. After the defeat, opposition parties called for her immediate resignation. She said Britain now faced either an exit from the EU without a deal, or April 12th, or a prolonged delay, and possibly no Brexit at all.
Mr. Speaker, I fear we are reaching the limits of this process in this House. This House has rejected no deal. It has rejected no Brexit. On Wednesday, it rejected all the variations of the deal on the table, and today it has rejected approving the withdrawal agreement alone and continuing a process on the future. This government will continue to press the case for the orderly Brexit that the result of the referendum demands.
Mr. Speaker, the House has been clear. This deal now has to change. There has to be an alternative found. And if the Prime Minister can't accept that, then she must go, not at an indeterminate date in the future, but now, so that we can decide the future of this country through a general election.
Around 25,000 students went on strike on Friday, calling for action on climate change. The students skipped classes and were joined in Berlin by Swedish teen activist Greta Thunberg. Since December, teenagers across Germany have been marching weekly instead of attending school.
The older generations have failed tackling the biggest crisis humanity has ever faced. When we say to them that we are worried about the future of our civilization, they just pat on our heads saying everything will be fine, don't worry.
We are demonstrating, for example, to stop seeing plastic in the oceans. This is our common future, and we want to be able to live in the best conditions.
French film icon Agnès Varda has passed away at the age of 90. The Belgian-born director died at her home in Paris on Friday. A pioneer of the French New Wave during the 50s and 60s, the prolific director was active for many decades, her films always adapting to the times. In 2017, she received an honorary Academy Award for her many contributions to the world of film. Known for feminist masterpieces like Cleo from 5 to 7 and One Sings, the Other Doesn't, Varda was one of the last surviving giants of French cinema. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.